On the morning of November 22nd, 1963, John F. Kennedy woke up thinking it would be just another normal day. Well, normal for a president of the United States, which is never really normal like ours. For him, it was simply another day filled with handshakes, speeches, and smiling at cameras. His morning began quietly in the hotel. He woke up, got ready, and had breakfast with his wife, Jacqueline. There was absolutely nothing suggesting this day would end up in history books. In fact, if someone had told him that this date would still be remembered decades later, he probably would have smiled and moved on. After that, he left the hotel. And like always when you're a famous president, crowds were already waiting outside. People waving, cameras flashing, everyone trying to catch a glimpse of the young president. At that time, Kennedy was one of the most famous people on the planet. Basically like a global celebrity, but with a much heavier job. He continued his trip through Dallas, Texas, and the city looked like it was preparing for a celebration. American flags everywhere, crowds lining the streets, everyone waiting for the presidential motorcade. And honestly, everything was going great. The crowds were happy, the press was happy, and the security team was happy, which is usually a good sign. Kennedy and his wife got into the open-top car, and the motorcade slowly began moving through the streets. He was waving left and right, and the crowd was cheering back. It looked like a perfect political day, but while all eyes were on the president, there was someone else watching the scene. Far away from the crowds, far away from the cameras, and far away from the festive atmosphere. In a building overlooking the route, a man sat near a window on the upper floor. From there, he could see the entire street below. Down there, people were laughing and taking photos. Up there, everything was much quieter. Strangely enough, thousands of people were watching the president, but almost no one was looking at that window. And sometimes, the smallest details are the ones that change history forever. The motorcade kept moving forward, the crowd kept cheering, and Kennedy kept smiling like he had done hundreds of times before. But suddenly, everything changed. Within just a few moments, the festive atmosphere turned into confusion. People started looking around. Some didn't understand what had just happened. Others tried to figure out the source of the disturbance. And suddenly, everyone was talking at once. The motorcade quickly sped away from the area, and police officers rushed into action. At that moment, no one knew the full story. But everyone knew something big had just happened. Within minutes, news began spreading. First across Dallas, then across Texas, and then across the entire United States. Radio stations interrupted their broadcasts, TV channels cut their programming, and people gathered around television screens everywhere. Imagine sitting at home watching your favorite show, and suddenly every channel switches to the same breaking news. That's exactly what happened. In stores, in restaurants, in offices, and in homes. Everyone was searching for answers. As time passed, the picture slowly became clearer. And soon, the United States realized this was not just another news story. It was an event that would change American history forever. In Washington, emergency meetings were held. Across the country, shock spread rapidly, and journalists were running in every direction trying to collect information. By the evening, it was no longer just an American story. It had become a global headline in Europe, in Asia, and in dozens of other countries. Special newspaper editions were printed, radio stations continued non-stop coverage, and millions of people followed every update. And so ended a day that began completely normally, a day full of smiles, cheering, and crowds. But it ended as one of the most famous and impactful days in modern American history. John F. Kennedy's last day began like any successful political trip. But within just a few hours, it turned into a moment people still talk about today. And even now. November 22nd, 1963 remains one of the most historically significant days in American history. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to suggest the topic of the next video in the comments. Thank you.